Good morning, my name is Shannon. I'm the Acting Vice-Chancellor of the University of Canberra, and I'm in conversation with Michelle Grattan this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Francis.
Well, Bill Shorten suggested this week the changes to the government's proposed superannuation reforms, but of course Scott Morrison, the Treasurer, promptly rejected these proposals. What's likely to happen to any of these reforms now?
Well, it's very much up in the air, Francis, because not only is there argy-bargy between the government and the opposition over them, but of course the government is struggling with the critics in its own ranks. The Conservative Liberals have taken up this as one of their causes. They say that the Liberal base is outraged and they're trying to get Scott Morrison to bring in some big compromises, including on the question of retrospectivity of one of the measures, which the government says isn't actually so. It's not retrospective, but nevertheless there's argument about that. Scott Morrison is still in discussions with the Liberals, and I think we won't know for a little while where it's all going to land.
Well, sticking with money then, in a speech to the National Press Club again this week, Shorten also outlined a number of potential budget-saving measures. Are the two major parties going to be able to meet halfway on this task of budget repair?
Bill Shorten's measures really were a bit cute, frankly, because they were a recycling of proposals that Labor put to the election, and of course the Liberals weren't going to take them up. They'd campaigned against them at the polls. So it was an effort by Bill Shorten, I think, to show that Labor had plans. In a sense, he's still behaving as though the election's a few Saturdays off. He's out every day and throwing up proposals and so on. On the question of meeting halfway, I think that we will see the opposition pass the $6.5 billion savings that are in this omnibus bill that the government's going to put forward. They're measures that the coalition proposed, but Labor accepted or banked the savings before the election. So for its own economic credibility, it, I think, needs to pass those and will pass them. It hasn't yet seen the details of the bill, so it's still putting in a caveat, but I think that's the way it will go. On other measures, I think that Labor will hang out on some. It said that before the election. I think it'll maintain that position. And on some that come forward in the future, maybe it'll do deals. The Greens might do a deal on the odd one, but it'll be an issue by issue, measure by measure proposition for the government in the months ahead.
Sounds like a hard road. Scott Morrison also gave a strong speech this week promoting the need for budget repair and the danger of not dealing with debt. He made a distinction between the taxed and the not taxed, or taxed not, in that speech. Will this galvanise some sort of response or improve the ability to get things done in this area?
Look, I think the distinction between the taxed and, as he put it, the taxed not is not a particularly helpful one. At least the phrase is certainly not particularly helpful. It reminds one of phrases from Joe Hockey that didn't go down that well in terms of the lifters and the leaners and the end of the age of entitlement. I think that it's not a good idea when you're trying to rally people to accept difficult decisions to have language that's not inclusive, that seems to be blaming people, and that's what we've seen now from two treasurers. In terms of whether people take notice of Scott Morrison's argument, it was met with some cynicism from Labor in certain quarters. It resonates with business. I think he is identifying a problem that needs to be tackled, but actually getting it tackled is another thing. And after the unfortunate experience of the 2014 budget, which tried to address this question of budget repair, it's made subsequent efforts at budget repair that much harder.
Let's change topics then. The other topic of the week was the fact that the proposed plebiscite on same-sex marriage appears to be pushed back to February 2017 now, when there was a promise that it would happen very rapidly. And in addition, Labor seems to be hardening its stance against having a plebiscite and wants the Parliament to actually vote on it and do something. And the community, there seems to be a groundswell in the community too in opposition to the plebiscite. Is it dead in the water, or are we going to go in a different direction now?
It won't be dead in the water till it's voted down in the Senate, but I think that it's looking pretty much like a drowning thing, because there's not any enthusiasm for it in terms of Labor, the Greens, a number of the crossbenchers. Now, there could be turnarounds because, of course, Labor is trying to get a parliamentary vote and wants to keep the pressure on that, and therefore we won't know its attitude to the plebiscite perhaps until after that comes up. But I think that all the indications are that it'll probably be voted down, or very likely to be voted down. I don't know that that would break Malcolm Turnbull's heart, because I think that the plebiscite, if it did go ahead, would be quite difficult to handle, would be quite distracting. It could even be pushed out beyond February, because Colin Barnett says he doesn't want it to interfere with the WA election, which is in early March. So for the government to have that while it's dealing with all these other issues of budget repair and so on is, to put it mildly, not very convenient. It would be a distraction. I don't think, though, if it is killed, if they can't set it up, that Malcolm Turnbull will allow the issue to be decided by a parliamentary vote. I think he is, even though that's his preference, his position in the party vis-a-vis the Conservatives would preclude that, and also it would in a sense be a broken promise, because he said he'd run the plebiscite.
So what will happen? Nothing?
Well, I think it's quite likely, and I stress there's still uncertainty around all this, but it's quite likely that nothing will happen this parliamentary term, or at least nothing definite. The Labor Party would keep throwing up the issue and the government would bat it away.
Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see when it goes through the Senate then what happens to that bill. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Francis.